طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده تعالى ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So from Allah Ta'ala's fadl is that He has given us certain mawasim, certain occasions in which His mercy is greater. Certain occasions in which the acts of obedience, the opportunities for acts of obedience, they become much more plentiful. He's given us certain mawasim, He's given us certain occasions in which the sins are forgiven, His mercy descends, and the deeds, their reward is multiplied. And among those mawasim, among those occasions, is the month of Ramadan. And we, inshallah ta'ala, by Allah ta'ala's His grace, His fadl, in the next day or so we're going to be receiving a great and noble guest, an honorable guest, and that is the guest of the month of Ramadan. And like any other guest, preparation has to be made for it. When you have a guest that comes to your house, you prepare for that guest. You make preparations for that guest to make sure that you can receive that guest in the best fashion, in the best manner, that you are hospitable to that guest when that guest comes and arrives, and you become a host for that guest. And likewise is the case with the month of Ramadan. With the month of Ramadan, it is a great and dear and beloved guest, and we are happy when it comes. As Allah's Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, He Himself would congratulate, He would give bashara, He would give glad tidings to the companions when the guest of the month of Ramadan would come. He would say, Ja'akum shahrukum hadha, Ramadan Mubarak. He would say, this month of yours has come, the blessed Ramadan. The Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam would give glad tidings to his companions when the month of Ramadan would come, because it is the month in which the doors, the gates to paradise, they are opened, and the gates to hellfire are closed, and the shayateen, they are chained up. So the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, it would be an occasion of happiness and giving bashara, giving good news, glad tidings to the companions when the month of Ramadan it would come. And so when this guest of Ramadan it comes, then we have to treat it with we have to give it its due. We have to give this guest of Ramadan its due when it comes. And the best people who gave this Ramadan its due are the Salaf of this Ummah. The best people who treated this month of Ramadan, received the guest of Ramadan in the best way, were the Salaf as-Salih, were the early righteous Muslims. When we look at how they treated Ramadan, when we look at how they received the guest of Ramadan, and then we look at ourselves, then we become embarrassed. We become ashamed of ourselves because of to what level the Salaf would go to when they would receive the guest of Ramadan, and how they would be when they would receive the guest of Ramadan, spend time with the guest of Ramadan. So we should look at some of the things that the Salaf would give importance to in the month of Ramadan, in hope that we can emulate them in that regard. So among those things, the first thing that we should give importance to, as far as Ramadan is concerned, and as far as worship is concerned in general, is having muraqabah of Allah. Is having muraqabah of Allah Ta'ala concerning our ibadah, our fasting. Meaning we should be conscious that Allah Ta'ala, He's seeing us. We should be conscious that Allah Ta'ala, when we're fasting, He's hearing us. We should be conscious that Allah is well acquainted of what is inside of our hearts. And so we should make sure that our goal, our aim, our purpose behind Ramadan is purely for Allah Ta'ala. The intention is the first thing that should be focused upon before anything else as far as Ramadan is concerned. Number one, Muraqabah of Allah concerning your siyam, concerning your fasting and your ibadat. Being conscious that Allah is watching you. He's seeing you, and therefore the only benefit that you're going to get behind becoming so devout in Ramadan is when you do it for Allah Ta'ala. That is why Allah Ta'ala, His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said in the hadith recorded in Bukhari and Muslim, Man sama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbihi. Whoever fasts in the month of Ramadan out of what? Out of iman and out of wanting the reward, then that person, his previous sins are forgiven. But look how the Messenger stipulated a requirement. The one who fasts in Ramadan because it's an aada, because it's a cultural practice of the society that he lives in, no. The Messenger, he said, the one who fasts in Ramadan because if he doesn't do so, it's a taboo in his society. He didn't say that. He said the one who fasts in the month of Ramadan out of iman, out of faith, wahtisaba, seeking Allah's reward. That's the motive behind him wanting to fast. That's the incentive behind him wanting to fast. He just wants the reward of Allah. He wants to be forgiven for his sins. He knows that life is very, very short, and I need to be successful in life. And the way that I'm going to be successful in life is by being forgiven by my Rabb. So this Ramadan is an opportunity for me to attain my purpose in life, to achieve the highest pinnacle of life, of being forgiven, of my sins being forgiven by Allah. So that's the first thing that I, first and foremost, and everybody else should pay attention to. Having muraqabah of Allah, being conscious of Allah, that Allah is seeing you and watching you and hearing you in Ramadan, and therefore make your worship in Ramadan purely for Allah. Make your fasting purely for Allah Ta'ala. That's the first thing. Another thing, second thing, that we should give importance to in the month of Ramadan is the Quran. The Quran, the month of Ramadan, it is the month of the Quran. Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. The Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, it is the month in which the Quran has been revealed. And so the Muslim, he should give importance to the Quran. No doubt you're meant to give importance to the Quran throughout the year. But more now specifically, and more emphasis is now placed in the month of Ramadan, as far as reciting the Quran is concerned. Reciting it a lot. And thus we find that the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he said about Jibreel alayhi salam, that Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, he would go over the Quran with the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam in the month of Ramadan. كان يلقاه في كل ليلة في رمضان فيدارسه القرآن, أو كما قال, that Jibreel would meet the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam every night in the month of Ramadan, فيدارسه القرآن, and he would go over the Quran with the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam in the month of Ramadan. Why? Because the month of Ramadan is the month of the Quran. And in the last year that the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam passed away, Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam went over the Quran twice with the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. From this, the ulama, they deduce that a person should make khatam of the Quran in the month of Ramadan, meaning he should recite the Quran in its entirety in the month of Ramadan, and he should do it he should do it much as possible. He should do it much as possible. Recite from Surah Al-Fatiha all the way to Surah Al-Nas. You complete that, and then you go back and then you do it again. Surah Al-Fatiha all the way to Surah Al-Nas throughout the month of Ramadan, trying to make as much khatam of the Quran as you can, meaning reciting the entirety of the Quran from beginning to end as much as you can. And you should do it at those times where you are able to focus the most. As in the hadith that we just mentioned right now, Ibn Abbas, كان يلقاه في كل ليلة. Jibreel would meet the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam every night in Ramadan. Every night in the month of Ramadan. Likewise, Allah Ta'ala, He says to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, Ya ayyuhal muzammil, قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. So Allah Ta'ala tells the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam to get up at the night, to pray at night. And then Allah Ta'ala, He mentions وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, and recite the Qur'an. Recite the Qur'an with tartil, recite it properly, with deliberation, with contemplation. Recite the Qur'an, but when? If we go back to the first part of the ayah, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ, stand at night and pray. So again, this hadith here, the hadith of Jibreel meeting the Messenger ﷺ at night, this ayah here and other ayat, they indicate that the best time to recite the Qur'an is when? At night time. Why at night time? Why do you think at night time? Why is night time, generally speaking, the best time to recite the Qur'an, to make recitation of the Qur'an? Why? There are several reasons. Can anybody think of any?
Then you don't have other things to do, you can focus.
Ahsant, barakallahu feek. That's one of the reasons. At night time, you're not working, the kids aren't running right at home, so it's quiet. You can concentrate, you can focus, it's quiet, you don't have any other things that are preoccupying you, making you busy, distracting you. So that's usually the best time, when you can focus on the Qur'an, when you can recite the Qur'an, when you're not being distracted. Likewise, straight after Fajr. Straight after Fajr, that's a time when you're not distracted, you're not at work, the children are going to be asleep, those that are young in age, so you're less distracted. Another reason as well why the ulama, they mention that reciting the Qur'an at night time is best, is because that is when you are away from the eyes of people. People can't see you, and therefore you are more closer to al-ikhlas, you're more closer to doing the recitation for Allah Ta'ala, and you're further away from riya, you're further away from showing off, you're further away from reciting the Qur'an to be seen and to be heard. So that in general is the best time to recite the Qur'an, at night time. You can focus more, there are less distractions, you're finished with the chores and the tasks of the day, and likewise you're more closer to ikhlas and you're further away from riya. That is general. Some people, it could be the case that no, for certain people maybe in the day, because of their situation, daytime might be better. Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned this, that it differs from people to people. Some people, due to certain reasons, maybe they'll work night shift, for example, or for whatever reason it may be, maybe the afternoon is the best time for them to read. But the main thing that you're looking for, the main factor that you're looking for is, am I away from my distractions, my tasks, my duties, and away from people, from the eyes of people, so that I can recite purely for Allah Ta'ala. I'm safer as far as al-ikhlas is concerned. So that is something that a person should give importance to in Ramadan, making khatam of the Qur'an, reciting the Qur'an from beginning to end. The Salaf, they gave great importance to this. Sa'id ibn Jubair radiyallahu ta'ala anhu rahimah, one of the tabi'een, he would make khatam of the Qur'an every 2 nights. Qatada would do it every 3 nights in Ramadan. Outside of Ramadan, 7, every 7 nights. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, every day he'll make one whole khatam of the Qur'an. One whole khatam every single day of the Qur'an. Somebody might say, but did not the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam prohibit making khatam of the Qur'an to Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma in less than 3 days? Yes, he did. The Messenger prohibited them not to make khatam of the Qur'an in less than 3 days. However, this is as far as mudawamah is concerned. Completing the Qur'an in less than 3 days on a habitual basis, on a continual basis, on a permanent fixed basis. That is where the prohibition comes. Making khatam of the Quran in less than 3 days, if you do it on a habitual basis, on a constant basis, permanent basis, right? However, if it's the case that you're in a virtuous time, like Ramadan, then you seize that opportunity. It is allowed to make khatam of the Quran in less than 3 days, in a virtuous time like Ramadan. If you're in a virtuous place, like Mecca, for those who go to Mecca and they don't live in Mecca, then they can make khatam of the Quran because they're in a virtuous place like Mecca in less than 3 days. This is something that has been mentioned by the scholars like Imam Ahmad and Ishaq ibn Rahaway and others. So point being, then yes, khatam of the Quran should not be made in less than 3 days unless it's on a temporary basis. Virtuous time like Ramadan, virtuous place like Mecca, and so on and so forth. So this is something that we can see the Salaf, they gave great importance to, which is reciting the Quran in Ramadan a lot and making khatam of the Quran as much as they can. Third matter that the Salaf, not necessarily in any specific order, that they gave importance to was the Qiyam al-Layl. was the night prayer, the Taraweeh, the Qiyam al-Layl. The Salaf, they gave great importance to this as well. Allah's Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said to Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, Ni'ma ar-rajul Abdullah, law kana yusalli min al-layl. What a good person Abdullah is. Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu's son. What a good man is Abdullah. If only he would pray something from the night prayer. If only he would pray something from the night prayer. After that, Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma never stopped praying the night prayer. After that, Abdullah ibn Umar never stopped praying the night prayer until his dying day, until the day that he passed away radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, never stopped praying the night prayer because of the encouragement of the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. Because the night prayer, that's the da'ab of the salihin. That is the characteristic of the righteous people. كَانُوا قَلِيلًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ مَا يَهْجَعُونَ, as Allah says about the righteous people that came before. Little is the sleep that they would take from the night, meaning that they would exert themselves in worship of Allah at night time. This is the da'ab of the salihin. This is the characteristic, the habit, the habitual practice, the trait, the hallmark of the righteous people, that they get up at night and they pray to their Rabb when the rest of the world is asleep. And so the Salaf, they gave great importance to the night prayer. And really and truly, the one who engages in the prayer, in the night prayer and prayer in general, he'll find a ladha, he'll find a halawa, he'll find a sweetness, a taste, a relishment in the night prayer. And that is why the Sahaba ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim, what did they say? When the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam shortened the night prayer on a certain occasion, what did they say? They said, Ya Rasulullah, لو نفلتنا بقية ليلتنا هذه. O Messenger of Allah, if you could just complete the whole night in these nawafil prayer, if you could just lead us in the Qiyam al-Layl throughout the rest of the night. Why? Why did they say this? Because they found a halawa, they found a delight, a sweetness in the night prayer. They found a sweetness in standing in front of their Rabb in humility and submission, praying to their Rabb. They found a halawa in there. And that is why Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, لو صحت القلوب ما شبعوا من القرآن. If the hearts were correct, if the hearts were sound, if the hearts were upright, if the hearts were good, then people would not become, they will not have enough of the Quran. If the hearts, the problem's the heart, right? The problem isn't the physical body. Problem is the heart. If the hearts, however, are good and healthy and sound, then you're not gonna have enough of the Quran. You have a halawa, you will taste a halawa, you will taste a sweetness, a delight, a pleasure, this great amount of satisfaction when you are engaged in the prayer in prayer towards your Rabb, in the night prayer and any other prayer. But the heart needs to be sound. When the heart is sound, that is when the wahi, the Quran, it has an impact upon it, because the heart is a fantastic now, ready receptacle to become affected by the Quran, to be affected by the reminder. Even for the person who doesn't even understand it. How many times have you seen it? Somebody who doesn't even understand the Quran, and he gets affected. He doesn't understand the meanings of it, but he feels that this is something that is divine. As has been said, for example, to me by kuffar, that they can tell that this is something that is divine. They can't understand what it is, but they can tell that it has some type of distinction. There is something distinct to the Quran that makes it distinguished from Arabic poetry, for example. So the Quran, you will not have enough of it if the heart is sound and healthy and correct and righteous. So that's what needs to be focused upon, and then you will not get tired of the night prayer. It's not really the body. That's why you can find a young, healthy, strong man, and it's difficult for him to pray. It's difficult for him to stand for that period of time praying, right? But at the same time, you might see an old man, and he's able to stand praying without any problems. In fact, Shaykh Abdul Razak, he mentioned, Shaykh Abdul Razak al-Badr Hafidhahullah, he mentioned that when he was a young boy, he went to the Masjid al-Haram in Medina with his grandfather, Shaykh Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad's father. So he went into, his grandfather was taken for Taraweeh, and he says, I can remember very clearly, standing in front of me is a man, Indonesian man, standing in prayer. So this man, he sees him come, right, into the masjid. He's on crutches. Why is he on crutches? Got one leg. And the man comes into the masjid, and there he is, and Shaykh Abdul Razak is thinking, how's this man going to pray? Sitting, and then he stands in front of him, and stands in the Taraweeh on one leg. So that's a clear indication that it's not strength of body that is required as much as strength of a heart. Soundness of your body is obviously required to a degree, but what is more important is the soundness and the purity and the righteousness of the heart. When it's righteous and good and healthy, then it will not have enough of the Quran. As Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, لو صحت القلوب ما شبعوا من القرآن. If the hearts are correct, they will not have enough of the Quran. So that is something that we should give importance to. Praying the night prayer. 3 things we've had a look at. Number 1, the most important, the niyyah, your intention, having muraqabah of Allah. Allah's watching you when you're fasting. Do it for Allah, out of iman and seeking reward, and Allah will forgive you your sins. That's your objective. That's what's pushing you. Number 2, what was number 2? Number 1 was muraqabah. What was number 2? Quran. Number 3, what about Quran? Khatam of the Quran. Recite it from beginning to end as much as you can in Ramadan. Number 3, Qiyamul Layl, the night prayer. Another thing that the Salaf gave great importance to in Ramadan is sadaqat, is charity. They gave a lot of importance to this in Ramadan. As the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Afdalu sadaqa fi Ramadan. The best sadaqah is a sadaqah in Ramadan. Sadaqah throughout the year is virtuous. Ramadan, that's when it has the greatest amount of virtue. And the person shouldn't be scared. Ma naqasat sadaqa min mal. As the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, that sadaqah has never decreased a person in wealth. Just because you give in sadaqah, just because you give in charity, does not mean that your actual wealth is going to decrease. In fact, the sadaqah could be a reason for your wealth actually increasing. It's a sabab. It's a sabab shari'i. It's a legislative mechanism that Allah Ta'ala has put within His legislation, within the Sharia. It's a mechanism that Allah has put within the Sharia, that if it's the case that you give in charity, Allah Ta'ala will increase you in wealth. That's one of the causes of increasing your wealth. One of the Shari'i avenues, the Shari'i mechanisms of increasing your wealth, giving in charity. And the Salaf, they gave great importance to this in Ramadan. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he would not break his fast in Ramadan except with the masakeen. Except with the masakeen, with the needy people. With the needy people. He would break his fast with them. And his family, sometimes they would feel pity upon Abdullah ibn Umar, and so they would prevent people from coming into their house at times, because they'd feel pity upon Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, because he always wanted to break his fast with the masakeen. On one occasion, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he's out and he has his food with him that he's going to make his iftar with. Then he sees a sa'il. He sees a beggar. So he gives the beggar the food to break his fast with, right? Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma goes home. And he says, what is there for iftar? Because I had to give mine to a poor person outside. They said, we've had our iftar, we've finished. Food is gone. And so he had no choice but to fast the next day on an empty stomach. It wasn't like our days where you have something in the fridge, even if it be a pickle, right? They had nothing in those days. There were no fridges in those days, no preservatives that you can preserve the food with for a long period of time like you can in our days. It wasn't like that. It's what there is at home, what's been cooked at home, and you just eat that, you finish that, and if it's gone, it's gone. There's nothing else left. So Abdullah ibn Umar, he came home and there's no food, and so he had to fast on an empty stomach. But the point is that look how the Salaf gave so much importance to sadaqah in Ramadan, to charity in Ramadan. They gave it a great amount of importance, and we should do so as well. So these are 4 things we've looked at. Muraqabah of Allah. Number 2, Quran, khatam of the Quran. Number 3, Qiyamul Layl. Number 4, Sadaqah, giving Sadaqah in Ramadan. And likewise the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Man fattara sa'iman كان له مثل أجره غير أنه لا ينقص من أجر الصائم شيء. وكما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, whoever feeds a fasting person, he'll get the same reward as him, but it won't detract from the reward of the fasting person at all. So imagine the person's been fasting throughout the day. You break his fast, you give him food to break his fast with, you'll get the reward of his fasting as well, without his reward decreasing. This person A, he's been fasting throughout the day, and then you give him food to break his fast with, you get the reward that he has obtained as a result of his fasting, and person A, he will not lose his reward neither. So imagine a person who breaks a fast of many people, how much reward he's going to get. So this is something that a person should give great importance to. And fifthly and finally, we'll mention something that a person should give great importance to generally, and especially in Ramadan. One of the things that helps a person in achieving these 4 things in Ramadan is keeping away from excessive socializing, keeping away from excessive mukhalata, excessive socializing with people. There's nothing wrong with socializing outside of Ramadan, and even in Ramadan. In Ramadan, you go to the masjid, you meet your brothers, you might break your fast with them, you meet your brothers, you gather together for the Taraweeh, you're with your brothers, However, Ramadan is a time where you really want to capitalize, right? You want to really capitalize upon the time that you have, short period of time that you have with this guest of Ramadan. And so you really want to capitalize, and therefore you want to keep away from excessive socializing, and you want to make sure that you put people into the relevant categories, so you know who deserves your company, who doesn't, and whoever does deserve your company, how much of your company do they deserve. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he divided people as far as mukhalatah is concerned into 4 categories. As far as mixing with people, socializing with people is concerned, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he divided people into 4 categories. So you have the one that is like al-ghidha, you have the one that is like al-dawa, you have the one that is like ad-da, and you have the one that is like al-maut. You have the one that is like al-ghidha, nourishment, food, right? Food and drink. You have those type of people, they are like ghidha, they are like food and drink, they are like nourishment. And these people, these are the ones that you need. You need them a lot. And they are the ulama, they are the scholars, and those that want to emulate their footsteps in being righteous, in learning their religion, in enjoining good and forbidding the evil, in acting upon what they know, and in spreading what they know. This company, this is the best company that we can have. The scholars and those who follow their footsteps. Their company is like ghidha. If you keep away from that company, slowly but surely, it's going to lead to your death. It's going to lead to your death. If you keep away from that company, as we've covered before in the ahadith, now the shaitan, he preys on the lone sheep. He preys on the lone sheep, the one that is by himself. When there are 2 people, then they are further away from shaitan. When there are more, they are further away from shaitan. And so, you can't keep yourself away from that righteous company. The company of ilm. The company of acting upon the ilm. The company of preaching and reminding each other about their ilm. You can't keep away from that company. That company is like ghidha. That company is like nourishment for you. It's like food for you. It's like drink for you. Without it, you can't survive. That company, you take your portion from that company. And obviously, it doesn't mean that you need to be 24/7 with that company. You take what you need. Once you're nourished, then you can part from that company for a certain period of time, for a limited period of time. But you constantly need, on a regular basis, you need to have something of that company. That's the first company, ghidha. And that's the company that I and you and all of us should focus on Ramadan. Essentially having our company, each other's company. Ahl Sunnah, Salafiyun. We have each other's company. We encourage each other towards good. We encourage each other towards righteousness. This is the company that we need. Second type of company are those that are like dawa. Those that are like medicine. That's the company that you can't do without on a day-to-day basis. You need that company for your daily on a daily basis, for your day-to-day activities, for your day-to-day mu'amalat, your day-to-day interactions. You go out and you need something doing. You need a plumber to come over, plumber needs to come over, fix your plumbing. Electrician needs to come over, fix your electricity. You need to go visit the doctor, for example. This is the type of company you can't do without, because you need it for your life to be in operation. But you only have that portion of that company that you need. Just like you don't get Panadol or whatever and some syrup, that's a medicine, and you don't consume the whole bottle, do you? You don't constantly have Panadol. You don't constantly have whatever medicine you've been prescribed with. You have as much as you need, and once you've got it, that's enough, you stop there. The same thing applies with people in general. With those people that you need to interact with in order for you to maintain your life, but you just do it as much as you need. Third company are those that are like a da', those that are like a disease. They are like a disease, a sickness. And these are the people that you want to keep away from. These are the people who either harm you in your deen or they harm you in your dunya. Keep away from these people. They will harm you in your deen. It's Ramadan and he is, I don't know, listening to music. He's in front of you listening to music. You don't need that company. You don't need that company generally, especially in Ramadan. You don't need that company. Keep away from that company. He's a da', she's a da', she's a sickness for you. It's Ramadan and the person is engaged in gossiping and backbiting. You shouldn't be doing that generally, but now more specifically when you're fasting in Ramadan, keep away from that company. It's not good for you. It's Ramadan, it's the month of Ramadan. You want to recite the Quran and he says, come on, let's go and chill, let's go and relax, let's go to, I don't know, Margala Hills for example, and let's go for a cruise, right? And you want to do Quran, he's distracting you from that. Don't keep that company. You want the company that is going to encourage you towards those 4 things that we mentioned before, and other things as well. We just mentioned them as by way of example. So that company, those are examples that I've given. You can qis ala dhalika, right? You can qis ala dhalika. That's an example, and you can apply that example. You can apply the same underlying principle to other people. Anybody who distracts you from what is good for you as far as your deen is concerned, anybody that is harmful for you as far as your dunya is concerned, keep away from them. That's one of the best favors you can do to yourself for your life as far as the future is concerned. Keeping away from company that is going to harm you in your religion and your worldly affairs. If you keep away from that, you save yourself from a lot of harm, a great amount of harm. And the fourth type of people that you want to categorize are those people that are like death for you. Those people that are death for you. And those people are Ahlul Bid'ah wal Dalal. They are the people of innovation and misguidance. Those people who innovate into the Messenger of Allah, those people who are far from the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, they have beliefs that contradict the teachings of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. His company, her company is like death for you. They have acts of worship that they are bigoted to, and they oppose those acts of worship, oppose the Sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam and what the Salaf were upon. Those people, they are like death for you. They will, because the worst thing that could happen to you is not confusion and corruption concerning how to run your business, how to run your house, how to maintain your house. You need that as well. But the worst type of confusion and corruption that can happen to you is concerning your beliefs and your religion. That's the worst type of calamity that could occur to you. And that happens at the hands of Ahlul Bid'ah. You start hanging about with them, you start taking their company, you start compromising your principles. Before you know it, you start believing in what they believe in. It's not far-fetched. You can look back within history, for example, within England, how many people who used to show that they're adherents to the Sunnah, for example, and now they are, calling to unification of religions, for example. Kufr, disbelief, right? You have people that translated, for example, Sifat al-Salah of Sheikh Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani, right? And now the very same person, he says that prophets and messengers, human beings, they evolved from apes and monkeys, right? Osama Hassan. So you can clearly see the effect that Ahlul Bid'ah wa Dalal have upon a person. They are the worst company that you can have. Worse than the Fusaq. If a person is a fasiq, he's a sinner, he's an evildoer, however, he believes in the Sunnah, he defends the Sunnah, he says to the Salafiyun, I've got your back. However, he smokes, he listens to music, he engages in whatever acts of disobedience he engages in. That person is far better, 1,000 times far better than the person who is engaged in bid'ah. He's upon bid'ah, whatever the bid'ah may be, Sufism, Ikhwaniism, takfiriyah, whatever it may be, that person of sunnah that has fisq and fujur with him, he has sins with him, he's far better than that mubtadi', than that innovator who is an abid of Allah, is a worshipper of Allah. That Sunni Salafi, that is upon the Sunni Salafi Aqidah and Manhaj, but he has fisq, he has evils, sins with him, he's far better, 1,000 times far better than the mubtadi', than the innovator, than the person of misguidance, who is a worshipper of Allah as well. Why? Because that which Allah Ta'ala wants from you, first and foremost, after you take shahada of tawheed, is for you to be upon sunnah. And therefore, the first thing that shaitan is going to aim for, as far as misguiding you is concerned, after kufr, after shaitan, he has lost hope in making you a disbeliever, taking you to kufr, and the next thing that he's going to do, he's going to focus upon, he's going to take you away from the sunnah and towards bid'ah, before he even thinks about sins, before he even thinks about acts of disobedience. So that is why you have to categorize people. Who is my ghidha? Who is my nourishment? They're the scholars and the people of knowledge, and those who seek knowledge, and those who act upon the knowledge, and those who remind each other about the knowledge. That's my ghidha. That's my nourishment. I need that company. Second category of people, they are like my dawa, they are like my medicine. I have to interact with them, even in Ramadan. I have to interact with them, but it's limited. Third category of people are those that are like, they are like the da', they are like the sickness. They are the people who will harm you in your deen, harm you in your dunya. Those people of sins, for example. Those people who are bad advisors as far as your worldly affairs are concerned. Those people you have to keep away from. And the fourth category, they are death for you. They are Ahlul Bid'ati wal Dalal. So these are some of the matters that we should give importance to in Ramadan. And we ask Allah Ta'ala that He gives us tawfiq to reach this Ramadan, because it is still, hours away, or 24 hours or so away. So we ask Allah Ta'ala that He gives us life to reach Ramadan, gives us life to be able to complete Ramadan, because if you think about it, how many people spent Ramadan last year with us in this life, in this world, and this Ramadan has come, and they're no longer here. How many people were here last Ramadan, they had the opportunity last Ramadan, they don't have the opportunity this Ramadan. If Allah Ta'ala gives me and you life to spend our time with the guests of Ramadan, that's a fantastic privilege. Why has Allah Ta'ala chosen me to still see this Ramadan, and He hasn't chosen so and so? Why? It's a big privilege from Allah Ta'ala. So we ask Allah Ta'ala that He allows us to benefit from this Ramadan that is to come, and that He accepts whatever little good deeds that we do. إنه ولي ذلك والقادر وعليه. نكتفي بهذا القدر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.